All right, welcome to Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker, and here we are. We're doing a basic country guide for Sweden. So I'm reconfiguring the way that we're doing our country guides, and I'm playing through these a little while longer just to see like how the diplomacy around them evolves. But I think it's giving me a better idea of like the steps that are important to take. And so I think we can talk about what Sweden's goals are, sort of like broadly historically, right? 19th century, Sweden is in a personal union with Norway until the early 1900s. They've lost the Duchy of Finland to Russia in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars, because Russia was like one of the big things, one of the big participants in defeating Napoleon, and part of the diplomatic negotiation actually prior to turning on Napoleon was annexation of Finland. But Sweden, you're still doing fine. Like it's been 130 years since you were terrorizing the Baltic under Charles the 12th, but that doesn't mean that like Sweden is definitely done for by any means. Sweden is actually very, very strong when it comes to its starting setup in terms of its laws and its politics, except for like a couple of weird things. So you can see by just pinning things all over here that you've got some pretty weak landowners and devout, but for some reason they're in your government. So you go over here and you're like, oh, right. So Carl Jarl, Johann Bernadotte, this dude, he's French. He was actually a marshal for Napoleon before he came over to become the heir apparent to the Kingdom of Sweden. Unfortunately, he's gonna live probably a lot longer than he should, because your heir Oscar is really, really good. He's phenomenal. If you can get this dude to die reliably, then you really don't need to worry about your monarchy. Unfortunately, in 1.0.6, this dude might live for another 35 years, in which case you might need to turn into a republic just to get rid of him. But if you can hold on to your monarchy, it's cute. It's the foreigner, but he's a good guy, like a romantic diplomat, intelligentsia. This part is definitely coded. I'm not sure if he's always a romantic diplomat or not, but if he is, then these are not like terrible abilities. Romantic's a little annoying, but it's not the end of the world. But you need to come up with a new government. This is terrible. My recommendation is usually going to be petite bourgeoisie and intelligentsia to start. Petite bourgeoisie giving you clout, and then intelligentsia giving you the laws that you want to be working on. And then you probably want to immediately switch into wealth voting, simply because you want to move out of oligarchy. Oligarchy is very dangerous in terms of the extra political strength it's giving to your aristocrats. But also wealth voting will help you get a lot more power into the hands of the liberal parties that you need to empower as Sweden, at least temporarily, because you need to get down to multiculturalism, because you are starved for pops. You are starved for pops. And even if you fulfill your destiny and try to do nation formation for Scandinavia, which is not going to actually be that hard, as Sweden, you are the strongest. But even if you can do that, Denmark is not going to give you an infinite population here, buddy. And the heritage group that you're a part of is not particularly large. There are a reasonable number of European heritage pops all over the world, so you can survive on racial segregation, but you can't pick up Chinese if you stay in racial segregation. So you probably need to get into multiculturalism, and you probably want to make sure that China has some serious anarchy, so that way their pops flee to you, because your land is really high quality. There's not a ton of arable land, which is going to restrict your ability to absorb infinite migration. So, and listen to me when I say this, if you're playing Sweden, don't be afraid to be an imperial power. In fact, you desperately need to become an imperial power, because you need tons of pops and you need land for those pops to live on in order for you to thrive. So, but the starting land that you begin with is pretty high quality. Scania has ridiculous ridiculously good state modifiers, and then you also just have like good state modifiers on everything. And then this is where you go, hashtag Sweden is not overpowered. Maybe they are. I don't know. Paradox is cute. They like making Sweden powerful. I'm not mad about it. But you do need to be aware that even though these are some really, really, really high quality states in terms of the modifiers that they have, this is not a lot of land. You cannot survive here. So I recommend going into either Petite Bourgeoisie and Intelligentsia, or you can do Industrialist Intelligentsia, because the Industrialists will quickly overtake the Petite Bourgeoisie in terms of power. But that's something that you do have some control over, right? Like, if you're in Mercantilism, then you know that your Petite Bourgeoisie are going to be a little stronger because of who owns your trade centers, right? Merchant guilds own your trade centers under Mercantilism, whereas they are not owned by merchant guilds under Mercantilism. They're privately owned, which means that you have capitalists. So Mercantilism, bad for investment pool, good for Petite Bourgeoisie, which at the beginning of the game, that's where you are, use what you got. So you do some changes, you get wealth voting done. Ideally, you're going to get into a better citizenship law than this. If you have to settle for cultural exclusion because it doesn't start a civil war, that's fine. But like, you want to get some of this stuff done. Like, you do not need this much authority. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with all this authority? You can always run a road maintenance. That's pretty reasonable, because you are going to need to do some construction. For those of you who watched the old school kick the tires video, I think the right thing to do remains the same. If you can find that the great powers will not oppose you when you do a puppet play against Denmark, which you do need to build up your prestige, but we're going to talk about that. See, right now France would side with Denmark, so we don't need to rush our art academies here. But if you want to get to puppet Denmark immediately, you can. You absolutely can. Because all you have to do is just build like a level 3 art academy here and then subsidize it, because you start with the ability to do so. With interventionism, you can subsidize all buildings. If you do those two things, you will have enough prestige that you will go up to a major power, at which point you can puppet Denmark, because Denmark is a minor power. So there are ways for you as Sweden to get really strong really fast. But again, the quality of everything that you have in terms of laws is fairly high. You're a pretty strong industrial power, but you need to get out of migration controls. You need to get down to multiculturalism. You can probably stay on freedom of conscience all game. That one's fine. Eventually, you'll probably want to get out of local police force, but you start in per capita and with right of assembly. No serfdom, no slavery. You even start on propertied women, which is not bad. It's a little better to be able to move into propertied women afterwards, but it's not bad to have. So yeah, you've got a lot of potential options when it comes to Sweden, but the biggest thing that's going to influence you in terms of your development is going to be access to this little admiral. So this is a 10 stack. A 10 stack is an imperializing fleet. All you need to do in order to make sure that you can actually use this overseas is just recruit another general. You can even recruit a couple of them if you really want to, because by splitting up the power here, A, it's going to split up the power up here, but B, it's also going to let us invade with a smaller stack, which is what we want. Yeah, all right, so you're a jingoist and you're a royalist. All right, yeah, we'll take another jingoist, whatever. So now we have 10, 10, and 10, right? And this is a 10 stack, and 10 stacks mean that we can invade very cleanly with 10 without having any issues. And with a 10 stack, you can puppet some serious things. Even if you can't start by puppeting Denmark, if none of these guys can find a great power, you can usually, like, Sokoto can stop you, but outside of Sokoto, pretty much none of these guys can put up a serious fight. Same with Zulu into Transvaal and Oran, or Madagascar, or anywhere in Ethiopia. Picking up Oman isn't even bad. And then, of course, like Indonesia, you have, as Sweden, the ability to just immediately, and I mean immediately, like in February 1836, because you do need a month for your interest to age. But you can immediately start moving around the map, picking up a colonial empire. You just need to start at the bottom. But you are not like Mecklenburg, right? You are a minor power with a real navy. My recommendation is use it. I've heard some really fun stories about people who are like puppeting Lucca on turn 0. If you want to do that, you can do that. I think that puts your the crosshairs on you, which is it can be dangerous, but it just depends. But there are a lot of powers that you as Sweden are strong enough, because you don't keep in mind that you start with line infantry and mobile artillery. So your stats are going to be a lot better, and I mean a lot better than irregulars with infantry focus. You're just going to mulch those troops, and so if you can find somebody who's going to be weak and unprotected, like one of these guys or these guys, like just go there. Their pops there, right? That's and by puppeting them, you do add their demand and their production to you, which is going to be helpful, because like the more you can keep your grain down in terms of price, the more it'll help with your laborers, because you're going to rapidly industrialize to the point where like you got nobody working in farms. So that's my general recommendation with Sweden is go ahead, change your government up, because your starting government's ridiculous. What are these people doing here? These guys haven't been relevant in the country in like 15 years. Get out of here. Go into something more useful. You may need to reduce your taxes, not because you care about your pops. Don't ever care about your pops. Your pops are loathsome creatures. They will oppose you in every step. But because this will increase your legitimacy, which is going to speed up the rate at which you can take ticks on this, right? Right now we're looking at the 10th of July, and then if we can go down to low, we're looking at April. So if you want to do this, then, and you want to like have an actual budget that'll allow you to construct and stuff, then you need to do a bunch of consumption taxes. My recommendation is low taxes while you're trying to get some laws done, because you do not want to be stuck in oligarchy monarchy, because this is going to require that you have a ton of landowner support. A lot of your legitimacy is coming from landowners, and that's no bueno. If you want to do something crazy, you can keep the landowners in power here for a little bit of extra legitimacy, which will speed up the speed with which you go through these roles, but it'll also open you up to stall chance, which, depending on how you feel about playing RNG, I'm not going to recommend that on this guide, but if you want to do that, feel free. You should eventually get to the point where you are strong enough to take on Russia, because Russia is going to struggle immensely when it comes to their industrialization and their economy, and you have all the resources you need, right? All you need as an industrializing power is access to coal, iron, and wood. The only thing that you are going to struggle with initially is going to be coal, which is why I think Madagascar is going to be so helpful. Like, you have 8 in Scania. That's not a lot. But if you go down here and you colonize Madagascar, you get 80. 80's a lot more than 8, and these guys can't beat you. I promise. There's no way they can beat you. If you show me a screenshot of you trying to invade Madagascar with Sweden and failing, I will eat my hat. All right, that's Walker, and that's a basic country guide for Sweden. All right, take care.